Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie and welcome to another blueprint breakdown video for Infinite Lagrange. In this series I normally take a particular ship type and I break down all of the variations of that ship. For today's video though, we're only going to be looking at one variation because it's the only one I currently have unlocked, but I did still want to talk about it. We're going to be taking a look at the Noma shipping group's Aldabra, and this is a really cool little destroyer that actually surprised me. I wasn't expecting to enjoy this ship nearly as much as I did. Now, if you do enjoy this video or find it useful or helpful, please let me know by hitting like. It takes you 5 seconds and it's a massive help to this channel. And if you do want to go the extra mile to help support what I do, I have a Patreon page and a Redbubble merchandise store that you can check out for some really cool, unique swag. Right, all that said and done then, let's jump right into today's blueprint breakdown video looking at the Aldabra. So, we're going to go into the blueprints, we're going to go to Destroyer, and here it is at the top. Now, the Aldabra is named after a particular island or chain of islands, I think, near the Seychelles. They're pretty unique for their kind of turtle population, I think, is one of the big things about it. And that kind of makes sense, because this is basically a little mini Chimera. If we just jump out very briefly and add in the cruiser bracket, you can see here that is the Chimera Cruiser. Again, I will do a video on this at one point as well, but the Aldabra is literally spoken about as being the prototype, if we look into its stats here, the prototype of the Chimera Cruisers. It's enlightened the subsequent shipbuilding research and development. Cannons of varying calibers cover the surface of ships, capable of striking a wide range of hostile units on the battlefield. Now, when I first got this, I'm sitting there looking at it going, it's a destroyer for 8 command points. That fills the exact same role as the Taurus. Would I ever build this over the Taurus? And as I have started to upgrade this, I'm finding that actually in certain situations, yes, I would. Now, compared to the Taurus, it's almost as tanky. It's pretty much actually got very similar hit points and the same amount of basic armor, and you can see I haven't upgraded this yet on this. Its firepower isn't quite as high as the Taurus can otherwise reach, but it is a bit more versatile in its applications. The Taurus the offensive type focuses primarily just on small ships, and the assault type wants to shoot for the big ships, whereas the Aldabra kind of goes for a mixed bag. So if we jump in and have a look at the Fortress battery system, because again, being a Fortress battery, it is not just one weapon type. We've got a lot of different weapon types on display here, and a lot of cool stuff happening with those. First of all, we have the Mark III BG 2330A Fortress Dual Cannon Anti-Ship Battery, monstrous anti-ship fire there, focused mainly on the small ships, destroyers and frigates, but it will then also go for carriers, battle cruisers and cruisers if those are available targets, which the Taurus doesn't have as a possibility. It also uses standard cannon upgrades rather than the rather rarer energy cannon upgrades, which means you can upgrade its weapons a little bit easier. You then have your generic cannon, again projectile, anti-aircraft range built in on there, prioritises corvettes and fighters before going for destroyers and frigates. And yeah, there is the argument to be made that when it comes down to it, the Aldabra is an all-rounder. It's going to be shooting some of its shots at aircraft, some of its shots at enemy ships, and then you come into the enhancements, and the first one here is all ships focus fire, which syncs all weapons in the system to focus fire on one single target, reducing the cooldown by 80% every 90 seconds for 10 seconds. That is amazing, because what you're actually doing there is you're taking that anti-aircraft cannon and shooting at your main target with it too, which means rather than just having this one little cannon that shoot like the two cannons at the top of the Fortress battery system shooting at something, then having the generic cannon shooting at something else, and then of course there's the near defense system as well that's also shooting at anti-aircraft. Nope, when we have that enhancement, it is all weapons in the system focusing fire on a single target, like basically just to improve that firepower. Really, really useful. You don't necessarily want to always take this. If you're finding that actually you're going up against fleets that do have a decent amount of aircraft, it might be worth not putting this on there so that those smaller cannons will also continue to fire at the aircraft as well, whilst the heavier cannons are firing at the other ships out there. So there's a little bit of versatility in the innate design of the Aldabra, which I really appreciate. Of course, then we have our weapon system cooldown enhancements, our cannon damage enhancement, and there's bloomin' 3 of them, so you can see I've not enhanced this fully because I don't have the full tech points for it yet, but do the math on that. What I'm currently sitting at, then add on another 20% on top of that. Ultimately, I can only put another 10% on this one because I've gone for the hit rate on this. I think cannon hit rate is always worth taking, but if you didn't want to go for the all ships focus fire, that's 30% additional damage coming from your enhancements, which is pretty monstrous. You can also, again, improve the hit rate against just the frigates and destroyers. I'm at a point now where I'm going up against aircraft and cruisers, etc., so the all-round hit rate one seemed a better option for me. There's also an anti-fighter and corvette one if you wanted to use this for some anti-air. Ultimately, the versatility, I think, here is the Aldabra's biggest strength, and it is such a versatile ship. If we then have a look at the near defense system, again, low DPM, but of course it's an anti-aircraft thing here that will also fire at destroyers and frigates, and it does have some nice support functions here as well. Enhancements, again, we've got one that locks onto enemy aircraft in the nearby row to launch attacks, additional hit rate for some anti-aircraft there, more damage, more hit rate against frigates and destroyers or fighters and corvettes, depending what you go for. If you're finding you're not really going up against aircraft, obviously ignore this and ignore the fighters and corvettes one. Go for the extra damage and the hit rate against frigates and destroyers, and it just is additional firepower, which means all of those numbers, the 13831 standard anti-ship firepower and the 3045, is all going to be applied at the same target. That's a lot of damage. That actually now, at that point, is out-DPMing the Taurus. People didn't believe me when I said this, but believe me, it works. Anyway, let's have a look at the other enhancements that we have. We do have an energy system that has no upgrades, command system no upgrades, obviously. The armor system itself is just standard ship HP or physical resistance. Again, being Noma shipping group, it does not have energy shield like bonuses to it or anything. So if you're being shot by energy weapons, those are going to ignore your armor and just cut straight through. Worth remembering. And then if we go on to propulsion system, we've got cruising speed and we've got warp speed, and that is it. No additional evasion or anything. And being Noma shipping group, we've got those terrifically slow speeds, 650 for your cruising speed, 3,250 for your warp speed, which means the propulsion systems, if you're using a mixed fleet of other things and Noma, you might find that actually you do want to put some propulsion system upgrades in there. Yay! Now, a final point that people have asked a lot to me recently is this RE in the top right here, Star System Limited Blueprint, and people going, oh, but I've unlocked this and that means I'm not going to be able to use it in every star system. Now, whilst that's technically correct, I've yet to go back to a Phase 1 server, ever. Almost every single server out there now, once you've completed your first one, is a Phase 2 server onwards, which means, yes, you can continue to use it in other servers. I know it looks a bit sort of like... It's anxiety-inducing to see that, oh, it's limited. It's limited. I've spent all this time and energy upgrading this, and it's limited. No, you'll find that once you've done your first Phase 1 server, pretty much every single server option that comes up is Phase 2, and you can build the Aldabra into that as well. Ultimately, it just means that you're not going to find this in a Phase 1 server. So if you're a brand new player to Infinite Lagrange watching this video and salivating over the Aldabra Heavy Cannon Destroyer, I am sorry, I've kind of led you on a little bit of a merry chase there, and now I'm dropping the bombshell that you're going to have to wait until your first Tech 2 server in order to get one of these, just like you would have to with the Quawa Destroyer from Jupiter Industries, the Chimera Chaos, things like that. A lot of these RE ones require you to be on a Tech 2 server onwards, but once you've got it, it's very unlikely you're ever going to go backwards. Now, for me, the Aldabra versus Taurus debate, it's ultimately made completely null and void by the fact that I build both. As simple as that sounds, when I started this new server, I thought I would try the Aldabra first, and it impressed me so much that I then actually just started building Tauruses alongside it, and then when I've started hitting a cruiser level, I've replaced my Taurus Offensive with Taurus Assault, and I'm still using the Aldabra, and they're still doing absolute damage in the missions they're through. They're a little bit squishier, so they do tend to take a bit more damage, but assuming you've got a couple of support vessels behind you, it's not such a problem, especially since NetEase recently added this whole thing that front row ships all have emergency evasion strategies, which allow it to pull back to the mid row once it hits 10%, which do help keep it alive just that little bit longer, especially if you've got other front row ships like the Taurus. So the question of does this replace the Taurus is no. It works really well alongside the Taurus, and if you've got this instead of the Taurus, don't feel bad. They are both really good destroyers. Like, I'm genuinely astonished by this little ship. I think this has really impressed me. I wasn't expecting much of it, and it has done actually an awful lot, to the point that this is going to be one of those destroyers that I will build pretty much on every server that I come to now, earning it a firm place in Benzie's fleets. So yay! Good for the Aldabra, eh? Really nice ship. Do recommend leveling this one up. I'm throwing more tech points into it constantly, just to see how high that damage can really go, how survivable I can make it, what happens if I max this one out up to a full 100 tech points as well. I like doing that with ships. Anyway, folks, let me know your thoughts and opinions. Have you been using the Aldabra in your servers on Infinite Lagrange? How are you finding it? What enhancements do you use? What kind of builds do you go for? What situations do you use it in? So on and so forth. Would love to know what you guys are doing with this beautiful little ship in the comment section down below. Otherwise, thank you for listening to me ramble on about this one. Happy sailing, and see you all in Infinite Lagrange.